All right, well, of course, alpine grazing was just one of many pre-election promises the coalition made. We asked some of Victoria's main interest groups to rate the government's performance so far. Let's take a look.
I'd say in terms of effort and energy, we'd be seeing probably an 8 or a 9 in our areas. In terms of delivery, it's clear that they are committed to delivering on their election commitments. What for us we won't know until we see the first state budget will be, are they robbing Peter to pay Paul, so in order to fund election commitments.
The Ballieu government have really failed to take action to protect the environment. In fact, the actions they have taken have made things worse. So they've returned cows to the Alpine National Park, which has a huge amount of damage. They've said they're going to protect brown coal, which is highly polluting no matter what. They're against a new wind farm development, and they're also against a national plan to return the Murray River to health.
We'd rate them 6 out of 10 with potential. They've made some very early decisive decisions, things like removing the clearway restriction and the Sunday trading decision are good for business. We would expect that the budget will be the first time that we'll actually see a true indication of where the future direction might lead us.
It's marvellous the affection politicians have for various interest groups prior to an election, but it's pretty clear to say we're not feeling much love at the moment. It's difficult to see how this government is going to recruit 1,700 additional police if they're going to realistically reduce police wages and leave our constables $6,000 a year lower paid than their counterparts.
Someone put it to me the other day that the Premier may not have stood on a landmine in the last 100 days, and if that's how people want to judge the first 100 days, then fine. What I say is government is not about surviving simply being in government. It's about doing things. I think it's a damning statistic to say that the Parliament's sat, the government's been there for 100 days, they've got a clear majority in both houses, and yet after 100 days not one law has been made and not one law has been changed.
Well, Ted Ballieu, there's a recurring theme there that the government is being too slow to act.
Well, Josie, let me just focus on Daniel Andrews for a moment.
If I could just finish the question first. You were elected on the promise of fixing Victoria's problems, including reducing the cost of living. But so far there's been no action on your key promises of halving ambulance membership fees and rolling out natural gas to country towns. What's the hold-up?
That's just not right. We introduced the legislation on the Regional Growth Fund in the last sitting week of Parliament, and that will underpin the rollout of natural gas, so it's just wrong.
But as Daniel Andrews said, there's no action on this. There's no laws.
He's just wrong. Let me just make a couple of observations about Daniel Andrews. He's obviously got a failed memory, because when the Bracks government came to power, in the first 100 days, not one piece of legislation was passed.
But surely you don't want to use them as a template. Where's your action?
But Josie, when they were re-elected in 2002, they were already in government, not one piece of legislation in the first 100 days. And when they were re-elected in 2006, they did precious little. And indeed, they introduced and sat the week before Christmas as an urgency measure to introduce a critical water infrastructure bill, and it was never debated in 4 years.
Just back to the question, though, Ted Ballieu, on where is the halving of ambulance membership fees, for example?
Well, that will come in the budget. And just in regard to these issues and on the cost of living pressures, we committed to extend energy concessions from 6 months to 12 months. And we made that commitment, and not only have we introduced that, we have brought it forward to be effected from the 1st of March. So we've done better than honour that promise and deal with that cost of living pressure. Now, I know Daniel Andrews is embarrassed because one of the other things we have done is actually renegotiate the deal that he signed off on last year with John Brumby on health. Now, it was with the efforts of the Victorian and West Australian government that deal got renegotiated, and no sooner had we opened the doors than all the other states rushed in to renegotiate the deal, and we got a better deal for Victorians, and Daniel Andrews is embarrassed about it.
Let's stick to cost of living at the moment, though. Water bills will skyrocket thanks to the desalination plant. But you have refused to release what it would cost to scrap the plant altogether. What's your justification for not having all the facts on the table?
Well, all the facts are on the table.
Not the cost of the plant to scrap it.
Well, the cost of the plant to scrap it is effectively the same as the cost to keep it, because the contractual arrangements are such that there are no feasible material savings to be made, and there's a contractual obligation. Now, it's a plant that is enormously expensive, and we now know that over the life of the plant, or the expected life of the contract anyway, it will cost Victorians at least $650 million a year, even if no water is required, and over that life that'll amount to somewhere between $18 and $24 billion. Now that's a contractual arrangement, so that comes with an obligation, and the state is not about to embark on breaking contracts and therefore sending a signal to the investment community that sovereign risk is an issue in this state. We cannot afford to do that, and I don't think anybody who's in their right mind would argue that.
But you were so critical of Labor of refusing to release the availability cost of the desalination plant. What's the difference?
Well, that's exactly what we have released. We've released the availability cost of all of that.
But you criticise them for not releasing that. You're doing the same thing just on a slightly different issue.
We've released the cost, and that's the contractual arrangement. Now, with that, we run the risk of legal action and losing Victoria's reputation as a sound place for investment.
All right, we have to move on then. The Marquee ticketing system, will you keep it or scrap it?
That's a decision we haven't made yet, and I would have liked to have been able to make a decision by now, but it's an incredibly complex issue. We've received a report. We're now going carefully through that. What we do know is whatever we now do with Marquee is going to cost Victorians a lot more. And we don't want to make the mistake of our predecessors, make the mistake that Daniel Andrews made and John Brumby made, and rush this decision. This will cost Victorians. We're going to work through it, and we're going to get the best result for taxpayers and the best result for commuters.
When will we see a decision?
When that's finished, we'll make that known as soon as we've got a decision. But it's a very complex and sensitive negotiation.
All right. Just very quickly, your first budget's looming. You flagged already a drop in GST. What job cuts and program cuts should Victorians be bracing themselves for? Well,
we've faced a number of challenges now with the budget, and just a few weeks ago the Commonwealth withdrew $2.5 billion over our next 4 or 5 years of the budget.
Job cuts and program cuts, so which ones?
Well, we are sticking by our policy commitments and the parameters we set for the budget. We'll make the budget news
so are you ruling out job cuts?
Well, we've said there'll be no job cuts from any decisions that we make. There are obviously a lot of challenges ahead, and that's an issue. We've lost this money from the GST. We also have the pressure of the floods and the blowouts from the previous government.
All right, Ted Ballieu, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much for joining 730 Victoria.
Thanks, Tracy.